Right guys, today I will show you how easy it is to make homemade bread in the camp oven.
Hi, I am Jenny.
And I'm Sasha. We are full-time travellers and film our adventures across Australia. Together we take you to some of the wildest and remotest places this country has to offer. If you like adventure as much as we do, stay tuned, you're about to be blown away. Welcome to Wild World Adventures. Wild World Adventures, here we go.
A lot of times we found ourselves without the opportunity to buy fresh bread. The freezer can only hold so much, so we eventually had to come up with a solution to make bread. And we love bread. Jenny and me love bread for breakfast. That is a staple food for us. And also we eat bread to a lot of other meals like stews or whatever. So we always have to have bread. Now, I've been doing a lot of bread, sourdough bread at home. And a couple of years ago, I started trying out to make the bread in the camp oven. Now, I've started doing this at home in the normal oven till I worked it out roughly about how it works, and then I perfected it out on the camp, so in the fire. So today I'll show you how to make this in a fire. It's not a quick process. Allow about 6 hours for the whole thing to work. The more time you give it, the more texture you'll probably get in your bread. But I found that 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours usually works all right. Depends a bit on the temperature that you have. Warmer temperatures, your dough will rise a lot quicker. Colder temperatures, you might need to extend that time frame. So everything I show here today is a bit rough, so you have to work this out depending on where you're making your bread. Even altitude, if you're up in the mountains, it's different than when you're sea level. So everything changes a little bit, but the techniques will stay the same pretty much, and the ingredients will be the same. So just try it out next time you go camping somewhere. Take your ingredients with it, they're really basic, and just give it a go. I reckon it's better than damper. So I've cooked a lot of damper. Damper is not bad, don't get me wrong, but bread is, you'll see. All right, let's start with the ingredients. Main ingredient, obviously flour. Now this, you can use baker's flour, any flour, normal flour will do, just don't use self-rising flour. So normal flour, we need some salt, a bit of sugar, and very important, yeast. So you have to have that. Without that, obviously bread doesn't work. All you get is a damper. All right, now ingredients wise, I'm always a bit of this and a bit of that. So actually we've got one thing. Forgot two things. I always add a bit of olive oil, and we need water. Jenny, can we get some water? Yeah, here we go, trusty old water. Now you don't want that water too cold, so room temperature, I shouldn't say room temperature, outside temperature is perfect. All right, let's start with the ingredients. So first we'll take the flour. Now I use this little, whatever it's called, strainer, and sift the flour through. You don't have to do that, but it's just something I started doing. So I take 2 cups, 3 actually. This one's going to be a bit bigger. Now I'll put the right ingredients in the description below, so you'll see exactly what the ratio should be. But like I said, I'll do it a bit rough and then work it out as I go. Now all this does is it's just aerates the whole thing a little bit and just makes the dough rise a bit quicker, I found. This is also good later when we start forming the dough. This helps a bit spread the flour easily. All right, so there's our flour. That's a lot, 3 cups. That's a whole lot. Now, what we want to do is we want to actually mix the water and the yeast. So I'll mix the yeast with the water first. That way, it can dissolve a little bit. So this is like what, a tablespoonful, a little bit more. Yeah, about that much. And fill that with water. Now that should almost be enough water. If the dough is a little bit too wet, it doesn't matter because you add flour later on and that will dry it up. The wetter the flour is actually, the better or the easier it is to make the bread, I found. But it is harder to work it, so it's a bit of a trade-off. Doesn't really matter as long as it's not too dry. Now you could let this sit for about 10 minutes. That would actually help the yeast develop. But I'm just going to pour it in. This is probably a bit too much water now, but that'll do. Right, next thing I add is a good pinch of sugar. Now this helps the yeast as well to develop. Not the yeast, the bread to develop, and just makes it rise a lot quicker. Dash of olive oil, you don't need that, but it does taste good to have that in there. And salt. Now, about that much. You want a bit of salt in there. So you might think now's the time where you start kneading all this and do all that hard work, but no, nothing like it. All you want to do is combine these ingredients and check the dough for its consistency. Oh, great. You don't want it too wet and you don't want it too dry. Like I said, I put a bit too much water in there already, so this might take another half cup of flour here. From memory, it's 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of water. But it all depends on your flour as well, so just play around with it. At the moment the temperature here is about 38, 39 degrees, so that's a perfect temperature for making bread outside. When it gets colder in the winter months, it is a lot harder, I've got to tell you that. You have to find some sort of a heat source to get your dough rising quickly. Otherwise it just takes too long. Here you go, so that's what you're after here. See, this is not runny, but it's got sort of a elasticity to it. That's the right word to describe it. It is sticky, and that's fine. It's absolutely fine. That's it, and we'll just let this sit now. Give it an hour. Give it an hour and have a look. You want this dough to double in size, basically. Once it doubled in size, which should be at these temperatures about an hour, 2 hours maybe, then we do the second step. So this is the fun part. This is where we crack a beer and just let it do its thing. What I do is I just use a bit of this clinging foil, and then I'll put something on top of that, like a towel or something. So you've got to keep it moist. There you go, put that in there. So just hold it down. That's it, we let that sit like this. All right, and I'll see you back in about an hour. Right, it's been about an hour now. Let's have a look. Oh, beautiful. This is what we're looking for. This is exactly what we're looking for. Right, see that? See how this is all airy? That's done well. All right, so next thing we do, put a bit more flour. Always put it in that device, whatever it's called. Makes it easy to put in there. And now all we do is we work that dough. So we just scoop it out from the outside of the bowl, turn it into the inside. Because that dough is super soft or super moist, you can't actually use your hand. Or you could, but it's messy. So what I do is I just work it from the outside to the inside. So go, and then a bit more flour. If it's pretty moist from the start, it doesn't really matter too much. What you're essentially doing is you're building the gluten fibres in the dough. You stretch them, and in order to get a good fluffy dough or a good fluffy bread, that gluten needs to be stretched. So this is really the secret of making the bread. It's just working it, you know, adding a bit of flour to it and just making it work. So grab into it, put it up, fold it. Just that folding develops the gluten in there. And you can see after a while this dough starts to get a little bit more dense and firmer. So it holds its shape a lot better. But that's just, at the moment it's not too important, just want to stretch it, you want to work it a little bit. And now we're going to let it rest for another hour. So, same process again. Cover it with the clinging foil. And then a towel. That's it, we'll let that rest and I'll see you in another hour. Okay, it's been another hour since we last looked at the dough, and let's have a look again. Here we go, it's nice and fluffy, popped up again, so let's remove clinging foil. As you can see, pop back up, improved a fair bit, so that's good. And now we do the same thing again. Same thing, and you can already feel now that the dough has taken on a slightly more elastic texture, and that's what we're after, that elasticity. Now you can see the foil has come open a little bit, so try to avoid any air ingress into the bowl. This gives these dry patches. Not very good in the dough later. So, but this time, add a bit of flour to the surface. We're going to do a bit of kneading and stretching now. There we go. Plenty of flour stops it from sticking in your hands. And now all you want to do is stretch it. See that? Stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. And you will feel that dough starting to become super elastic and bouncy. And then they'll start to, the dough starts to develop these little bubbles, these little blisters, and this tells you in the right track. Once you've got these blisters coming up, that's the good stuff. If you can fold it as much as you can until you get to a point where it probably doesn't want to fold that well anymore because it's so full of air and gases. And then, see now it doesn't stretch that much anymore. Once you get to that stage, I just form a little bowl, a little round ball. Tuck whatever, get over here underneath it. Look, don't stress if this is a bit difficult to do. All you want to do is make it a nice round shape. There you go. And then you pop it back in there. Let it rise for another hour. This time I want to make sure that it's all closed. Right, one more hour. Right, another hour has gone past. Let's just check it again. Beautiful, look at that. So, same process. This time is the last stretching process. All right, this time go straight onto the table surface. And you can, you should feel now the dough has a lot different texture than when you first started it out. So same thing again, fold and stretch, and you would feel that it's a lot more elastic now. And those blisters should start to form a lot easier now as well. You can see these blisters here. See that? So this is where the magic happens now, guys. You want to fold this until you get these blisters starting to pop, and then once that's done, put a bit of flour all over it, sort of roll it and form a dough. Stretch the outside surface of the dough. Look, to be honest, I have no idea how to explain this to you. I don't know what I'm doing myself all the time, but I just literally just form this dough ball. See how that bounces back now? Oh. It still leaves a little indent, but look, that's what you're after. That's what you want to achieve by folding this. Give this a few more goes. Now, that's good. All right, I put a lot of flour on there now, because I don't want that to stick anymore. I want that to come off the surface later on there. I'm going to put it back in here, but I put a lot of flour on the bottom now, because that's basically its final resting place now. I'm going to get the fire going, and then I'll show you how I put it in the camp oven and do the rest. So this is pretty much it. That's your dough ball here. I can just cover that up with a towel for now. And yeah, let's get the fire going. All right, now everything took a bit longer than I expected, and what happened is the dough has risen again. So what I'll do is I'll just give this a quick fold again. It's probably better than leaving it like this, and then I'll get the pot heated up. you want the cast iron pot as hot as you can. And what we'll do is we need two other things in there. So one is, I've got a little pizza stone from Weber that just fits in there. That's brilliant. Now this is not a cast iron, it's a spun steel, so they transfer heat a lot faster than your cast iron ones. In a cast iron one, you probably good enough with the trivet and some sort of a plate on top of it. In the spun steel one, I prefer one of those pizza stones. All that's meant to do is prevent the heat from directly going underneath the bread and burning it. And you'll want a trivet in there because we're going to add water to this later. So you need to get this stone off the ground a bit. All right, before you put this in the oven, and that's the reason actually why I had to knead this again, is you wanna give this a cut, a slice. You want to make sure that it can open up. So I'm going to slice with a sharp knife, give this a nice deep cut. You can do a cross, doesn't really matter. I'll give it a cut like this, and now this is ready to go in the oven. Nice and hot. I'm going to give this a bit of flour just to prevent anything from burning. In goes the bread. Now special ingredients. I'm going to put some coals on the bottom. I've got a little windshield here that just prevents any heat spots that we get later in the camp oven. Now you don't need a whole lot of coals here. Just enough to maintain heat, and what that water does in there, it creates steam and lets that dough proof a little bit more in the oven while it's baking at the same time. Now with the coals on the top. That should do. Now that takes about 30 minutes, so 5 o'clock now. I'll give that half an hour to 5:30 and we'll check it, it should be good. Right, it's been about 35 minutes now, so let's have a look. Ta-da! Oh, there it is. See that? Perfect. Perfect. Beautiful, moist.
Moist.
And crunchy at the same time. Still a bit hot, but can't wait.
So there you have it, fresh bread from the camp oven. Doesn't get much better than that. My tip for families here is make some extra dough for a second life, or use it for something we used to do as kids. Wrap a bit of dough around a stick and cook it in the fire. Tasty and great fun. I hope you enjoyed our little cooking expedition today. If so, give us a like or drop a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you get notified when we are back on another adventure.